will property prices keep rising?
I'm glad you asked me this question.
15 times the amount of cranes in order to satisfy the amount of properties we actually need in Spain.
They're blue in the face, arguing all day long about what's behind it, but the facts are the facts, and the facts are...
Is now like correct pricing, or has it been too cheap for too long?
It was bonkers. It was absolutely bonkers. Why isn't this being done in Spain, I ask? You know, when it could be done. It could be done.
If they asked you, is this a new normal, will property prices go up?
It is. Yes, it's going to be a perfect storm.
Raymond, welcome to the High Homes channel.
Thank you for having me today, Kian.
So, Raymond, we invited you onto the channel. Before I give the mic over to you so you can introduce yourself, I'll give our viewers a bit of context. A few months ago, I was reading through Idealista, and I like to sort of stay posted on their articles. And I came across your article, and the article was sort of titled, Will Property Prices Keep on Rising? And I started reading through it, and I thought to myself, man, I need to get this person on the channel. So I want to dive deep into, the reasons or all the facts that you mention and your perspective and your view on the matter. But before we do that, Raymond, can you give our audience a bit of background on yourself and your company and what it is you do?
Okay, so I'm a lawyer who's qualified here in Spain. I'm from mixed parents, British, Spanish. I started working in 2003 for several law firms, and then I started my own practice in 2016, and I specialize mainly in conveyance, in visas, and in taxation.
Perfect. So we will link your, let's say, law firm details in the description of this video. So if you guys would like to reach out to Raymond's law firm, you can go ahead and do that. Let's start with sort of the title question of your article. Will property prices keep rising?
Undoubtedly, yes. As I provide a breakdown in the article itself and in the conclusion, in my personal opinion, property prices in Spain will continue to rise over the next years. I'm not as sure they will continue to soar at maybe 2 digits as they've been doing until now, but they will certainly go up, yes, indeed.
What do you think is behind this? I know it's a very complex question, but if you had to break it down, how would you sort of, what would you put behind the driving factors at the moment of property prices increasing?
As in the article breaks it down in two, like external, like international ones, and then also national ones. Obviously, the ones that are more meaningful, have had more impact, are the national ones. But I should brush on the international ones as well.
Yeah, we can start there if you like.
Okay. Well, the COVID-19 pandemic, the global pandemic we had, it had a severe impact in the markets. And so the central banks all over the world, they decided to implement this quantitative easing policies, which meant they flooded the markets with liquidity.
Yep.
The impact this had was that inflation, there was a sharp spike in inflation. So investors grew uneasy, and investors, they're always looking for security, obviously.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing safer than bricks, obviously gold as well. And so over the last 2 or 3 years, you've seen a sharp spike in gold, in real estate as well.
Yeah.
It's been a great, prices have appreciated. So this has influenced a lot. Also, the drop in interest rates. Interest rates, it's the price of a mortgage loan. So if the price goes down, this means it's open to more people, and more people can take a loan. And this has happened internationally, and obviously Spain has picked up on the trend. As a matter of fact, in July 2025 has been the best year for Spanish mortgage lenders since 2007.
That says something.
Yeah, it goes to show.
I mean, it's cheap money, right? Like, I've recently myself closed a mortgage on a 30-year term for 2.5 fixed. I mean, for our American audience, like or people that are outside, Spain, I mean, that's quite cheap, right? It's very cheap money.
Yes.
And something that you touch on there is inflation. And that's something which I find really interesting is people compare, people look at the property prices and obviously have seen the increase over the last few years. I tell, my team, my clients, it is the value of the properties which are going up, but a big part of it is the value of the money that's going down.
Yes, correct. I don't mention it in this article, I mention it in other articles, but why investing in property is a sound investment, strictly from a financial point of view. Obviously, you can enjoy the property itself, enjoy Spain, but from a financial point of view, because of inflation erodes your savings in the bank, so it basically eats them away, so the audience understands it. basically your money is worth less every year that goes by.
Yeah.
And with so to keep inflation in check, what people do is that they try to look for a store in value. Like gold traditionally has been the safe haven where investors have poured their money because it's a store of value. So it's a way to offset and hedge themselves against rising inflation. But now, obviously, over the last 30, 40, 50 years, people have poured into property, and property as well is seen as a store of value. So obviously, if there's a market downturn, there's a bust, property prices will go down in some areas more than others. But as long as you've done your homework and you've selected property which are in prime areas, such as the Costa del Sol, where we're in now, this privileged place, prices will tend to hold up. So the impact is less on the downturn. Yeah. As you were right, the point you mentioned is very important. The huge spike in inflation, this has meant that people pour their savings into real estate. And this is one of the reasons we're seeing, which I label in the article external, because it's a worldwide phenomenon. It's happening in the States, it's happening in the UK, in Ireland, it's happening in Australia,
it's
everywhere, yes.
Is there any other external sort of factor that's affecting property prices in Spain, would you say? Or is that the main one?
Well, yes, immigration, I think is very important. Like in 2015, we were 47 million people in Spain, and now in 2025, we're almost brushing 50 million. So that's an increase of 3 million people over the last 10 years, and all of these people need housing. So that has a severe impact as well.
It's really interesting you say that, because aside of that, obviously we have population increase, but then we have say tourism sort of tendencies. And we recently did a video with my colleague Kim where we talk about how the Malaga airport is going to increase its capacity from 25 million passengers to 36 million passengers. It just seems like Spain's growing at a rate, right? And I think you correctly say so in your article. Is it's growing on all sort of facets, but property supply is still limited.
Yes, it is. I mean, particularly brushing, now that you've given me the opportunity of talking of Malaga, there was an article I wrote that I saw Malaga as the California of Europe.
Yeah.
I wrote this, I think it was back in 2020, 2021, we were in the midst of the COVID, and I was saying that property, and specifically Malaga, will bounce up very sharply, as it has indeed, because Malaga had a series of factors, well, actually the region of Andalusia, specifically taxation-wise, which makes it very friendly for investors. And there was an article now in the Sur last week, very interesting, where, for example, they were talking about digital nomad visas, and the third place that has most nomad visas in the whole world is actually Malaga.
Really?
Yeah.
That's an interesting fact.
Yeah. Well, we, as I mentioned at the beginning, we do a lot of visas as well. So, I mean, the climate, low taxation, specifically if you get a digital nomad visa, you pay very low taxes. So all of this are very enticing for foreigners who wish to relocate and work remotely with this gorgeous weather we have now. I think it's 26, 27 degrees outside. It's just incredible. I mean, yes, it's a very privileged place.
So going back to what's behind property prices increasing, what would you say is the next sort of national reason? So we talked about COVID and what happened in 2020. We talked about inflation. What's going on here on the ground that's sort of driving prices increasing in your opinion?
Yeah, the main issue I point out in the article is the lack of supply.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, we have the supply, which is the developers that build all these off-plan properties, and then we have demand, which is you can break it down between the national demand and foreign demand. So the main issue, in my opinion, that is driving prices up in off-plan is supply. And the reason being is because developers are having a very hard time building property in Spain. They have to go through lots of loops and hurdles. The administration, the current administration in power, they have posed lots of problems, lots of red tape. And so this pushes back developers, and they are building fewer homes. Like, for example, back in the boom days of 2005, 2006, Spain was building around 750,000 homes a year,
wow,
which is as much as Germany, England, the whole United Kingdom, and France and Ireland combined, which is just incredible.
Bonkers.
Okay, it was bonkers. It was absolutely bonkers. And now we've gone to the opposite end in 2025, where we're building less than 87,000 homes.
In 87,000 homes, and we just mentioned property population increase of over nearly 3 million. 87,000, properties per year is nothing. Just like just something which I thought was really interesting, Raymond, is I met a on-site developer. It was about a year and a half ago with clients, and one of my clients mentioned there's so many cranes, right? There's so many cranes in Costa del Sol. And and the on-site said, you see all the cranes that you currently see? You need 10 times or 15 times the amount of cranes in order to satisfy the amount of properties we actually need in Spain.
Yeah, you're right, Kian. It's absolutely right. You can't argue against that. I mean, you can go blue in the face arguing all day long about what's behind it, but the facts are the facts, and the facts are that 87,000 homes are being built a year off plan in Spain, and there's a shortfall of at least 400 to 500,000 homes a year. And this is because there's a strong demand, not only from us Spanish nationals, but also from foreigners who wish to relocate and spend their twilight years in Spain and enjoy everything that Spain has going for it. And this drives a huge demand. And obviously, you can't go from one side to the opposite of not building, from building 750 to building 87. I mean,
totally right.
I think Spain is the second country that builds fewer homes in all of Europe after Portugal. Portugal is the number one that builds very few homes.
Wow.
So that, to my mind, is the number one reason driving the sharp increase of prices in off-plan. We were speaking earlier on, but there's an issue with this, is that they released latest figures, quarterly figures of the sales figures, the government last week, and we've seen that the boom of off-plan property is still going very strong at a 12-digit rise in the last quarter. But unsurprisingly, contagion has spilled over to resale property. It's because, again, it comes back to the same thing. As people are unable to secure off-plan property, at least at affordable prices, because prices keep going up and up and up, what's happened is that people now are focusing on resale. So resale is also taking a sharp spike upwards at 2 digits. Before, resale properties were going up in Spain at around 8% nationally, obviously in the coasts, another prime areas, Mallorca, whatever, Madrid, it was going at 2 digits, but that was a national average. But now the national average is above 12% in Spain. It's hit 12.7 for resale property of the last quarter. So the issue of the supply crunch on off-plan is now spreading contagion as well to resale prices. So everything is going up.
It's really interesting. So I currently live in Iberia, right in the east part of Marbella, and I've lived in East Marbella my entire life. And I was at a barbecue with some friends, right? And we were talking about stock in Iberia. So let's just talk about Iberia for 1 second, and we'll continue with a few questions. But in Iberia, today, it's very difficult to find properties sub 400,000 euros, right? And normal apartments, good ones, okay? There will be obviously property under 400,000 euros, but good properties, good apartments. And the discussion was, but is now like correct pricing, or has it been too cheap for too long, right? Like we're talking a prime location in Costa del Sol, like accessing properties in Iberia, having a sort of a benchmark of 400,000 euros. I think property prices are actually where they need to be, and they've been very cheap for many years. And just to sort of piggyback on that, when I started real estate when I was 18 years old, there was the stock that was on the market everything was left from the last financial crisis, right? There was literally no construction from 2008 all the way to 2016. There was not really much going on in Spain in terms of construction. And that's the moment where actually us at High Homes, we were selling everything was left up from the bank stock, all the Sareb properties, all the, and those were sort of, all eaten up, all purchased. And then in 2016 is when I started seeing construction start again in Costa del Sol, at least from my point of view, right? But property prices, at some point it was too cheap to even build. Like you could buy properties at prices which were below the price of building them and buying them, which is incredible. And for many years, with a lot of stock, there were prices which were incredibly attractive. And looking at back to my conversation with my neighbor, it's like, okay, if you now come to Elviria, the starting price for a nice apartment is 400,000 euros. It's pretty much where it, in my opinion, needs to be, right? Where you're buying a property at X per square meter in line with that sort of sub-market. But on the back of that, and maybe it's a perfect time to ask you, 2008, right? What is the difference? You know, when people look at us now and they look at, you know, prices sort of going up, what differentiates, Raymond, 2008 from what we're living today?
I'm glad you asked me this question. So in the article, I say Spain has reached an all-time high in property prices, which is true. The facts back it up.
Yeah.
And I conclude that we are in the midst of a new property boom, but it's very different from the 2008 one. Very different. Whereas the 2008 one was driven by greed mostly, because I was back then, and we were buying 3 properties for investors. Like, you know, they flipped one, another one was kept for the children, and they enjoyed the other one with the wife.
Pure speculation.
Yes, it was driven by speculation. We had the ninja loans, we had the subprime. So it was a market basically driven by greed. But now the major difference is that in 2025, what's driving prices mainly is that national reason I listed, which is the first one, is the supply crunch. There's only 87,000 properties being built a year, whereas before it was 750 back in 2008. So obviously, if the population goes up from 47 million to 50 million, we have very strong immigration in Spain. I mean, Spain is also, from tourist point of view, is the second destination in the world, only after France. So it's a very popular hotspot, you know, for tourists, and I think we've hit 100 million this year in 2025.
If I'm not mistaken, I read somewhere that we're sort of in line or to surpass France by 2030 as the #1 destination in the world.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah, can you imagine? It's incredible.
So there you go. So the fact is that we have an issue, or the government has an issue in its hands, and is that there's a huge demand for property in Spain, whether it's for rental, whether it's to live in, whether domestically by the nationals or by foreigners. So things have to change, and the government, which is what I proposed in the article, should sweeten the pot and should make it easier, reduce the red tape for developers so they can build more houses. Another of the reasons I pointed out in the article was that because of the property bust in 2008, several administrations since then, not only of the current political party but also the opposing political parties, they decided to restrict and bring upon harder measures so as to make it safer and more secure. But that translated into hiking prices, because obviously developers passed on all these additional security measures onto the end consumer, which is the property buyer, and that is another factor which is factored has been built into the sales price. So, in my opinion, I think the government should kind of like take it a bit easy and allow developers to build more properties, because I know 750,000 is bonkers. Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. We can't have that. But growing to the opposite, the extremes are never good, you know?
Yeah, I think we're at the lesser extreme at the moment of building. Would you agree?
Yes, I think the verge is a bit more the middle point.
Yeah.
If we could reach a middle point of building like 300,000 homes a year, I think that would be more in the mark. I mean, right now, as I said, there's a shortfall of 400 to 500,000 properties a year. And obviously, you know, it's a huge issue for the government as well from a political standpoint because of its electoral base. So I think the government should absolutely do what's best to sweeten the pot for developers and make it easy on them. Not so much red tape, not so much reduce the tax burden as well on developers. So it makes it easier for them to build houses. It's a necessity.
Raymond, what other national factors are driving prices to keep rising in Spain?
Another main factor, I'd say, would be the administrations, the tax burden they impose on property. As I mentioned in the article, the Spanish administrations, they see land as a piggy bank. So when they need to finance themselves, they raise their taxes a lot. And the fact is that 35% of the sales price, or the final sales price of a property, it's all taxes.
How do you
both
break that
national
down
and local.
for our audience to understand? How do you calculate that 35%? Based in the price the developer pays to obtain the land and to re-urbanize, or how do you?
Yes, all the tax the developer has to pay to develop the land, to buy the land. Also, the local, the regional taxes, I was saying, like in Andalusia, the property transfer tax. All of these taxes, they amount to roughly between 30-35% of the final asking price, which is excessive when you compare it as opposed to other countries. So I think that should absolutely be looked into, and Spanish administrations in general, I recommend, should be less dependent to finance themselves on land, because ultimately the people who are paying the price are vulnerable collectives, which politicians, so they claim, they're trying to protect young people who are unable to who cannot afford to access the first rung on the property ladder, senior people who have separated, divorced, or are in some kind of financial issues. Divorces as well create that problem. No, you need two houses now after divorce. So
yeah, so that's actually a very interesting sort of social problem. More people divorce, more property is needed for those two people. Makes sense.
Indeed. So I think to sum it up, administration should be less reliant financially on land to finance themselves. I think they should be more creative when it comes to taxes, and there's other forms of revenue they could implement, other than attacking what I consider and what the Spanish Constitution labels as a basic necessity.
Yeah. Raymond, in your article, you mention, listed as one of the national factors, the aging of the Spanish construction workforce, and just workforce. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. The average age of a worker now, of a construction worker in Spain, is 45 years, younger than me. But obviously, it's an issue. It's an issue because developers are struggling to find workers in Spain, not as opposed to how it was 20, 25 years ago, where lots of young Spanish nationals, specifically those that didn't go to college, they wanted to become workers because it was a handsome pay and such. Nowadays, Spanish youth frown upon being a construction worker, so developers are struggling to find workers. And increasingly they're becoming of age. So,
am I correct in saying that part of the strongest part of the workforce for contractors and developers right now is the immigrational side of everyone that's coming into Spain to work those positions that Spanish people don't want to really work, or feel that it might be too good to do?
That is correct. Yeah. Well, I mean, the government itself has stated that Spain needs another 2.53 million immigrants to prop up the economy in the future over the next 20, 30 years.
That's incredible.
So if we're now 50 million, we're going to go up to 53 million. But again, this is going to further exacerbate and compound the housing problem, which is what this interview is about. If property prices are already high and we bring in an extra 3 million, well, we're going to have a serious issue in our hands. So obviously, property prices are still going to continue to go up the more people that come. And if we go up to 53 million, undoubtedly.
So Raymond, what baffles me is if you look at Europe and you look at Spain, in terms of land mass, we're one of the largest countries, right? Why can't the central government just open up and free up land and allow people or developers to develop that land?
That's a very good question. Developing land takes years, it requires a lot of planning ahead and huge financial commitments. Right now, I think Spain is perhaps struggling a bit with its budget. But there are huge swathes of land in the hands of local administrations, such as town halls. If these town halls and the government made it possible to facilitate, from an administrative point of view, to develop this land, it would have a huge, and I mean a huge, impact on house prices. They would actually fall. They would fall sharply, because, as you say correctly, there's a lot of land available, but for whatever reason, the local administrations and the government, it would seem, contrary to their political discourse, are not interested in freeing up this land so as to keep the taxation high, because the taxation goes in line with the property price. So the property price is full, so do tax revenue. Okay, so there's a sort of perverse vested interest in property prices being high for local administrations and the government, because on propping it up, they can collect more taxes. So it's a bit perverse, but if property prices actually dropped, so would taxation. Okay,
It would be a massive problem for Spanish arcas públicas. It's not like they say, like they're budgeting.
It would have a major impact. Indeed, it would. But one of the major factors, again, as I was saying, on property prices, between 30 to 35% approximately, is all the tax burden from both local, regional, and national administration. So that's 3 levels of public administrations which are sticking their little paws in the tax pot. And it's actually the end consumer, the property buyer, who's paying for the party. So if local administrations and the national government were to facilitate and reduce the red tape, reduce all this regulation, and easing up how developers could develop all this land, it would have a severe impact on property prices.
Do you see that happening? Do you see I mean, Spain politically, it's quite divided, between PSOE and PP. Like, it seems like a majority is very difficult to obtain. And what you're talking, liberating such pieces of land, it seems like a mammoth move. You don't see that happening?
It would only a decisive and resolute bipartisan movement by both major political parties would make it achievable. If there's no political will behind it, it will not be done. And even if there was a political will, it would still take a few years to implement, but it could be done. But it requires a decisive approach between both political parties.
It doesn't seem like that's like on the cards right now.
I'm afraid it's off the cards, yes. Given their petty squabbles, their ongoing feuds, I don't see that happening. And not in the short term, but not in the mid or even in the long run. But there's also different types of ownership that Spain could implement. Like, for example, I come from England, and there's a lot of council estates and shareholders. So like 60-70% of the property belongs to the government, and 30-40% belongs to the tenant who's inside, who's a
like a leasehold,
hybrid.
like
a
leasehold setup.
It's a hybrid between a tenant and an actual owner. And gradually, it's shifting. Over the years, the percentage changes, and from having, let's say, 20% initially, it goes on to 40, 50, 60. Spain doesn't implement that. Why not? Why can't the government build, thousands of these homes? People pay a deposit of 20, 30%, almost like a mortgage loan. I mean, this would appeal to people who cannot attain or do not qualify for a mortgage loan. The government would build these properties and to show a sort of commitment and also responsibility. The people pay 20%, the government pays 80%, but gradually it would shift and gravitate toward the ownership of the property towards this to the person who's vulnerable. And over the next 15, 20 years, instead of owning 20%, they would own 60 or 70, and finally they would own the property outright, and given enough good circumstances. Why isn't this being done in Spain, I ask? When it could be done. It could be done.
Raymond, we've touched on the external factors, internal factors, domestic factors, administration, legislation. Super interesting, by the way. It's been great. We'll, by the way, link your article in the description of this video so they can check it out. What would you tell that member of the audience, people that are tuning into the High Homes channel right now to listen to this? What would you tell them if they asked you, is this a new normal? Will property prices go up, and why? What would be your answer to that person?
A resounding yes. Property prices will continue to go up in Spain. And as we brushed on earlier on, it's not only on off-plan, it's also on the resale, because the laws that are being enacted, the red tape, all of this advocates the market to continue going up. So maybe we're not going to see a sharp increase that we've seen until now for 2-digit growth all over Spain. Maybe will be more moderate, the increase, but nonetheless, in the short term, in the next 3, 4, 5 years, in my personal opinion is that property prices will continue to go up across the board.
So you would have two driving forces: inflation driving your cash downwards, and then property prices going up. It's like two things going in the opposite directions, which is quite scary for people that they're on the sidelines, waiting to make a call, waiting to make a jump. Property prices going up and value of money going down. It's the perfect storm.
It is. Yes, it's going to be a perfect storm. But it makes sense if you look at it. I mean, if with a huge inflation spike, people have to protect their money. It's imperative. Money just sitting idly at a bank is losing purchasing power from year to year. So what do people do? The smart money goes into gold. The smart money buys property or art, things that are store of value and help you to offset and hedge yourself against rising inflation. So I think it's a smart move. And property in Spain, for the reasons we've outlined in this interview, it will continue to go up.
Thank you so much for joining us on the High Homes channel. I know that you have a busy day ahead. We will love to have you back on the channel at some point to talk about the solutions that Raymond would have for our Spanish property market, because I know that it would be too much of a long video if not. So thanks for coming, like always, and to you guys watching this video, we hope you enjoyed this content. If you found it valuable, please press the button, like this video, comment any questions you have for us or for Raymond. We do read all of your comments and we do get back to you. If you are new to this space and you want to stay posted with information regarding Spanish real estate market, Costa del Sol, and much, much more, press that button, subscribe to the High Homes YouTube channel, and we're going to keep you guys posted with the best of the best. Raymond.
Thank you for having me.
Hasta la próxima, guys. Hasta luego.